Hey viewers and viewers, my name is General Red Strategist and welcome back to Some Sir You're Being Hunted. This is the first episode I'm actually recording after I got back from my Easter leave. Well, technically as I'm going to record this, my Easter leave from work is not yet over. Rather, what I should say is, it's my first recording having gotten back into my flat down south after having visited friends and family back up in the north of England over the Easter break. But yes, I still have a few days left on this Easter break as of when I record this, so you get what I mean, ladies and gentlemen. It is episode 737, isn't it, right now? Yeah, I do think that's right, because I literally looked at my upload schedule about 2 seconds ago before I started recording this, and I'm pretty sure that was the number episode we were up to. Obviously, last time we were doing the Thomas the Tank Engine challenge. Yeah, I split that into 4 episodes. In retrospect, I wonder if maybe I should have just done it in 3, but nah, it's fine. 4 is fine. Basically, I needed something that I could split down into numerous episodes, and then I'd have plenty of things for the queue over Easter, basically. And that's fine. It did well enough, and I enjoyed it. But we're back here once again for another podcast-style episode. Just me and you folks out there chilling out, conversing about whatever the hell is on my mind at this particular time. And yes, I do have something on my mind, and I don't know if I've talked about it before. You know how me and Phil, for example, have often mentioned in past Sir You're Being Hunted episodes that we're not big sort of, film/movie people. There's people out there, no doubt some of you watching this video right now, who are massively into films or movies for you Americans. And, if I was to sit here and say, what movies have you been watching recently, or what movies have you had your eye on at the moment, things you might go and see at the cinema or whatever, no doubt there'll be many of you who can answer that question. You can probably rhyme off all sorts of films, either that you've seen recently, that you want to see, films that are coming out that you're interested in, that kind of thing. Not me, in all honesty. I couldn't really name that many of them. There's one movie that I do want to sort of have a look at the listings for at my nearest cinema to see when it's being shown, assuming it's still being shown as of when this video goes out. And that movie is Last Breath. I don't know if I mentioned it before. It's based on a true story. It's about saturation divers in the North Sea, and apparently an incident that occurred quite a few years ago where a saturation diver actually got stuck at the bottom of the ocean, the North Sea, and managed to somehow survive for a prolonged amount of time when he shouldn't have been able to. And it just sounds like it's probably a good thrilling film and all that, and I just thought, you know what, it's maritime, it's nautical, therefore I'd probably be interested in it. So that's a film that I kind of want to make a note of and go and see it at my local cinema. Because the thing is, I know where my local cinema is, the one that's nearest to me anyway, and getting to it is actually not too difficult. So I thought to myself, I should take advantage of that more often. Whenever there's a film on that sounds like it might be up my alley, maybe go and see it, and maybe that'll get me a bit more into film, that kind of thing. But no, actually a film that I was rewatching recently over Easter, a film which I can actually watch more than once. I can watch it over and over again, and I feel like I'll never get tired of it. And I say, like I said earlier, I don't know if I've mentioned it before. I may have done, I'm not sure, but fuck it. I'm going to do a podcast-style discussion rather, just talking about it. Master and Commander, ladies and gentlemen, The Far Side of the World. You know the one with Russell Crowe? It's obviously not a recent film. It's been out for quite a few years. But it's a great one. It's basically Russell Crowe playing the part of Jack Aubrey, Captain Jack Aubrey, who, if you don't know, obviously he was a character who started out in literature, Patrick O'Brian novels, set during, obviously, the Napoleonic Wars, and Captain Jack Aubrey is obviously in the Royal Navy. And so it's all about, his life as a commander, fighting the French, etc., etc., at sea and all that. And, it's one of those franchises that the Patrick O'Brian Aubrey novels, they've been going for a long time, because I think, did he start writing the first one back in the 70s? Technically, I've read the first 3 of the Patrick O'Brian Aubrey novels. I've read, obviously, Master and Commander, Post Captain, and HMS Surprise, and they are good books, full of very technical knowledge, admittedly. So if you're not really into sort of seafaring adventure, and also obviously they're written in a style of prose that is meant to imitate the way people talked back in the day. So obviously, you know, it's the sort of it's advanced level reading, to put it that way. Not to make it sound like I'm doing a humble brag or anything here. That's not what I'm trying to do at all. I'm just sort of trying to say that, you know, if you're a bit of a beginner when it comes to historical fiction, the Aubrey novels maybe are not exactly the place you'd start for that, you know, for beginning that kind of thing. But once you get to an intermediate or advanced stage, they're quite good. But yeah, it's like saying, because there's a lot of Aubrey novels out there. I think there's about 25 of them in total, is there not? Patrick O'Brian wrote a lot, basically. And the thing about them is, there's only ever been that one movie adaptation, which of course was Master and Commander, The Far Side of the World. Which is kind of surprising, because you think they would be sort of ripe for all kinds of film adaptations, because there's a load of stories. But Master and Commander, The Far Side of the World is basically a mashup, I believe, of two of his stories. The original Master and Commander novel and a novel he wrote called The Far Side of the World, which I've not read yet. I really want to go back to Patrick O'Brian novels, though. Like I said, I've read the first three, but I haven't read any others. I need to get the fourth in the series at some point. Problem is I've got loads of other books at the moment that I want to read as well. But, you know, it's a good film, ladies and gentlemen, Master and Commander, The Far Side of the World. Russell Crowe gives a very stellar performance as a ship's captain in the Royal Navy of the day. And the thing is, as a depiction of life on an old wooden-hulled sailing vessel of the very early 19th century, and as a depiction of, you know, how brutal naval warfare in that period would have been, Master and Commander is a great film. It's accurate in those senses. Obviously the story of it is not historically accurate. It's a fictitious story of, you know, Aubrey's ship, HMS Surprise, chasing down a French privateer. But it is, you know, a good film nonetheless, and although that, like I say, the story isn't necessarily historically accurate, the actual depictions of life at sea and naval warfare are pretty damn good. The thing is, like, obviously I really love, you know, the big battle scenes in Master and Commander, because they really give a sense of how disorienting and confusing naval warfare in that day would have been. You know, once you get the big broadsides of cannons going, the smoke filling the air, just reducing the visibility, and just the absolute chaos of when you try and board the enemy ship to take it over. It depicts that really, really well. But other than that, I also just really love the depictions of daily life at sea, because of course, you know, for the sailing ship navy back in the day, a lot of their time would not have been fighting. It would have just been patrolling. A lot of their time would have been just spent with the humdrum daily monotony of life at sea, scrubbing the decks, doing all the jobs that need doing, etc., etc. And so I always thought that the film kind of really nails that particular aspect of life at sea as well, to a decent extent. So yeah, I like I say, it's one of those films that it's that film for me that I can always just watch and rewatch constantly, and I just really, really enjoy it. I find it really, really. I can just watch and rewatch it all the time. Sorry, I'm repeating myself in essence. But I'm sure, you know, you guys out there, you understand what I mean. I'm sure there's a few of you out there who have that one movie, that one film that you've watched before that you can just rewatch over and over again, and you never get bored of it. Let me know in the comments what that might be for you, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah. But it makes me think that I should probably have a look for other sort of kind of maritime warfare based movies set in the sort of late 18th, early 19th century. Because there's probably a lot of other good ones out there that are great depictions. I mean, obviously there's the Hornblower TV series, which I've heard of. I've never seen it, but I should probably pick that up at some point, because that also is supposed to be pretty good. I've also mentioned, obviously, this isn't so much to do with maritime warfare, this is just more like life at sea in general. I've also mentioned the 1950s film adaptation of Moby Dick, you know, based on obviously the novel by Herman Melville, Call Me Ishmael and all that. Have I mentioned that one before? In Sir Being Hunted? I may have done, I don't quite remember. Possibly. And we've got a device piece here that's spawned in the rock, and is therefore technically inaccessible, looks like it. Oh, there's a sweet spot there. There we go. Never mind. Yeah, because I've read Moby Dick, the original novel. It's a fairly substantial novel, and again, you know, if you're into historical literature, classics, that kind of thing, it's not. Sorry, I just knocked my microphone. It's not sort of like a good kind of beginner level entry sort of book, to put it that way. But you know, it's more of a sort of intermediate to advanced level reading, to put it that way. Because unlike Patrick O'Brian writing the Aubrey, the Aubrey novels, Patrick O'Brian obviously was writing from the 1970s onwards, so he was a much more contemporary writer trying to imitate an old-fashioned way of writing, whereas obviously Herman Melville, he was a writer of the 19th century. He lived then, and so, you know, he was just writing in the way people talked back then. There's a slight difference there, but yeah, both very much, you know, intermediate, sort of entry-level books, to put it that way, at the very least, possibly more advanced. But worth a read if you're into your classics and all that. Don't get me wrong, they are great books. Great novels. Great adventures of, well, great novels rather, of seafaring adventure and all that. But yours, obviously getting back to Master and Commander, you know, like I say, I love the way it's depicted, life at sea in the early 19th century. Because that's the thing, you get a sense of how crowded old wooden hull sailing ships would have been. Because the thing is, you know, they have at least like 100, probably way more than that, in terms of numbers of crew. And you think how they're all just packed in to that physical space on board the ship. When they sling the hammocks up at night, they're basically all wedged in like sardines. And the film does give a good sense of that. And obviously, like, the battle scenes give you, like I say, a real good sense of the disorientation, the confusion, the chaos, and just also how kind of brutal, you know, it would be when you have cannonballs blasting through the hull. Because that's the thing, in naval warfare of that period, the chances of actually being hit by a cannonball were actually quite slim. The thing that actually is more likely to kill you in a battle of that kind is not being hit by a cannonball, it's the splinters flying through the air caused by a cannonball hitting the wooden hull of the ship. That's the thing that's most likely to injure you, to mess you up. And again, that's one of those things that the film gets absolutely spot on. The other thing that I always like about that film that it gets spot on as well is the age of some of the crew on Aubrey's ship. Obviously Aubrey himself and a lot of the senior officers are older men, but some of the officers are actually quite young. You know, there's even one of them who is probably only about 12, 13 years old, and some of the other officers are, what, like late teens or very early 20s at most. And truth is, that is accurate. 18th century into the 19th, it's not uncommon to get people as young as that on naval ships. Because that's the thing, you know, a lot of like middle class and including some upper class families, for example in Britain, they would send their sons off to sea to learn how to become naval officers. And of course the way they would do that is they would become midshipmen, sort of from the age of about 12-ish on average, round about there. And so they spend a few years basically being tutored by serving naval officers, by captains, first officers and whoever, in, you know, seafaring techniques, how to command, that kind of thing, before eventually, you know, probably by the time they could start to get to their late teens, they would actually be properly given their commission as officers, made into lieutenants or whatever. But the thing is, in order to become a midshipman, you actually needed prior seagoing experience. So most boys, you know, stepping foot onto ship as a midshipman at age 12 or whatever, that wouldn't be the first time they'd have been at sea. They'd have probably had to go to sea even earlier than that in order to build up the requisite sea time to be able to qualify to be a midshipman. So some boys, for example, would start out, you know, in the crew. Or they would, for example, maybe be allowed onto a ship serving as a steward to an officer. Something like that. So that could be boys as young as, what, like 9 years old? 10? Something like that. So, yeah. Having young boys serving as officers on old naval ships of the 18th and early 19th century, yeah, not inaccurate. Not inaccurate at all. Because they would be midshipmen, they would be training to become officers and all that. So yes, certainly something that the film does well, which I honestly rate and I think is a good thing. But yeah, Master and Commander, ladies and gentlemen, if you've never seen it, it is well worth a watch. It is a great film. I'd wholeheartedly recommend it, especially if you're into your sort of naval maritime history and all that. It's good stuff. But you know, if you do know of any sort of good other films that actually depict kind of naval maritime warfare or life at sea in kind of like the 18th century, early 19th Napoleonic Wars, definitely let me know in the comments and all that. I'm sure there are other ones out there that I'm unaware of, which I probably would be interested in. Because sometimes I do think, you know, as someone who hasn't really watched, you know, doesn't really watch a lot of films and all that, maybe I should. Maybe I should try and get into a bit more, you know, watch a few more films and all. It's just a matter of finding ones that interest me and all that, ladies and gentlemen. Alright, I think that'll probably do for a podcast-style episode, won't it, ladies and gents? So, hope you enjoyed listening to me ramble about Master and Commander for however many minutes that was. A bit of filler content for the channel and all. Okay, right. Social media links, propagandist channel link, etc., as usual, are down in the video description for anyone interested. If you enjoyed, a like. It's the cannon fire on the mines, Philip. Press left mouse to fire cannons.
Death trap.
Okay, it's a bit straightforward. It's kind of like a side-scrolling section. Like so. Oh god. Wow, I'm just fucking missing all the time.
What are they supposed to be? Just like skeletal sharks?
Yeah, they're like shipwreck sharks. Of course, because they're made of shipwrecks.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh, got a bit of lag there. Oh, there we go, pitch. Yeah, got a bit.
You're trying to kill them all, are you?
Yeah, I think I'm actually getting points, I think.
Oh god, you've gone down to 9 hearts now instead of your 10.
Oh shit, that's big.
Oh, death charge.
Yes.
Yeah, that took out a lot.
Yeah, it's good, isn't it?
Have you got unlimited of them?
Yeah, oh, look, I see you coming behind me. Shit.